Hi everyone, Anthony World Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Off album, Free LSD. This is a brand new LP from California hardcore punk outfit Off, their fourth full-length LP today, and it arrives 8 years after the release of their last in 2014, Wasted Years. If you didn't know, the band is fronted by the legendary Keith Morris of Circle Jerks fame. When the band broke onto the scene, they were essentially a hardcore punk purist's dream, with connections not only to Circle Jerks, but Rocket from the Crypt and Red Cross. They dropped 4 fire EPs, assembled them into a larger record, and yeah, that was their debut. But their strict adherence to a meat and potatoes hardcore punk sound sort of ended up being their undoing, because the 2 records to follow from here saw diminishing returns, creatively speaking, because the band was slowly kind of painting themselves into a corner. So Off's now been lying dormant for quite a while now since then, and they've undergone a bit of a lineup change too, picking up Trail of Dead's Autry Fulbright on bass, as well as Justin Brown on drums, who has quite the background in jazz, and has worked with artists like Georgia Ann Muldrow, as well as Thundercat. So this lineup change, as well as the extra time to stew on a new sound, has left Off sounding revitalized, because they're really shaking up their sound on this LP and getting a little conceptual with it too. The guitars and mixes on this record, in comparison with previous Off releases, are way heavier, fuzzier, and a bit more psychedelic too. There's almost like a stoner rock level of beef to this thing, but only goes so far, because obviously if you made it too thick, too heavy, you would lose the muscular tone of those drums, and the speed at which these songs are played would make things kind of mushy. But it is heavier, and this heaviness pays off on tracks that are a bit more indirect and abstract, and rely on these just thunderous riffs, really chaotic moments as well, like with the track War Above Los Angeles. In addition to that, the drums are insane on this LP and really show out, especially on the record's 4 lettered interludes F, L, S, and D, all of which are these chaotic free noise jazz punk segues, which section the album out in 4 track parts. So in a way, it's like the band is almost going back to that 4 EPs format, while also mixing these songs in a way to where they have like an unbroken flow. The droning chords or feedback from a previous song, or maybe some drum noise, will carry over into the mix of the next track on the intro. So really with this thing, we're moving from track to track to track to track. And at least from what I can tell, each section of this LP has its own little loose lyrical themes to it. Broadly speaking though, the lyrics on this record have changed a bit in tone and focus from Off's previous efforts, as now a lot of the tracks on this thing are about the downfall of society, aliens, conspiracies, shadow government, corporate takeovers, hoaxes, corrupt politicians. It's like Keith Morris went into quarantine and came out even more of a madman. The first 4 tracks of the LP deal quite a bit in the destruction of the human race, whether that be at the hand of war, missiles, a cannibalistic economy, or like on the song Time Will Come, an alien race coming in and like obliterating all of us. And let's not forget to mention false flags, as well as prison camps for children on the song Killed to Be Heard. Lyrically, Keith doesn't come off nearly as specific as like a Jello Biafra per se, but there are similar hardcore punk dystopia, Dead Kennedys vibes going on here. On the second batch of tracks on this thing, a lot of the songs deal in like this greater, unknowable, or shadowy power controlling or destroying mankind, whether that be a corrupt government or technology or some unnamed invisible empire, while the third batch of tracks deals quite a bit in lying and hiding the truth and spreading mass confusion, poisoning the well of public discourse, like on the track Muddy the Waters. And the song Worst Is Yet to Come is very much lyrically a wake up sheeple type of moment, asking the listeners to wake up from their faith in an increasingly broken system. And it kind of goes from there. I'm not saying Keith isn't speaking facts here. I'm not saying there isn't something to what he's saying. There is. And knowing the kinds of causes Off has historically stood for, I am assuming these tracks are coming from a good place. But I just wish that Keith didn't sound like such a nut bar saying this stuff half the time. So I'll say this. I really enjoy Keith's enraged vocal performances on this thing. He is as animated as he was the day this band started over 10 years ago. And again, he is making quite a bit of sense on some of these tracks, but I just don't think he is filling in a lot of the blanks, and that lack of detail can lead to, in my opinion, a lot of misinterpretation interpretation, especially when you're getting at things in a somewhat conspiratorial manner. So with that being said, the instrumentals and performances on this thing are amazing. Go off, totally. Like with the roller coaster ride of build-ups and riff changes on the opener, Slice Up the Pie, or the amazing title track, which is packed with all of these blast beat style drums, grim guitar leads, and exhilarating riff changes. Also take notice of the squelching, screaming synthesizers and dizzying drum fills on the song Time Will Come. The eerie synth leads that pop in on the song Behind the Shift sound like something out of a Twilight Zone episode too. With it being a hardcore punk album, there's not a whole lot to, eat up or observe compositionally speaking. It's really about the explosivity, it's really about the riffs, and Off certainly brings that and has had a history of bringing that. And I'm also happy to report generally Dimitri Coates is working quite a few more guitar leads and melodies into the riffs on this record just for a little added color, which really makes songs like Invisible Empire and Ignored and many more on this thing. Once more, that insane drum work on this LP, compiled with the extra noisy bits and trippy effects. All this culminates into a punk record that has a bit more detail than the average thing you're going to find out there in 2022. It's kind of like Off has slightly matured past the sound they broke onto the scene with, which was great, but was also very much just an exercise in nostalgia, and now they've been able to effectively switch things up while staying true to their punk roots. This thing is kick-ass from front to back with maybe only a few lulls in between, plus it doesn't really stick around long enough to stale out or paint itself into a corner too much. Once again, the themes and concept of this record overall is pretty grand and far-reaching, and the band's rage and chaotic little details throughout these tracks really fills in the shoes of that concept quite nicely. I'm feeling a light to decent 8 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head, it's another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, off forever.